There is a moment, almost too small to notice, when the history of everything could have bent another way. In the world we know, Simon Petrikov found a crown buried beneath ice and ruin, a relic of forgotten power that promised knowledge but carried madness. But imagine instead that he never found it. The crown remained hidden, its whispers muffled beneath centuries of snow, and Simon's hand, cold and trembling from curiosity and love, never reached for it. The story of the Ice King, the kingdom of frost, the tragedies that followed, none of them came to pass. This is not a world of miracles. It is a world where one mistake simply never happened. And yet, without that single act of discovery, the shape of everything that came after shifts, subtly, profoundly, like light bending through glass. The multiverse itself holds its breath, watching a quieter history unfold. Simon Petrikov remains a man of science. He travels the remnants of the old world, cataloguing artifacts, searching for meaning in the ruins of civilization. The war has ended, leaving behind skeletons of cities and ghosts of knowledge. Where others see wreckage, Simon sees continuity, a chain of discovery stretching backward through chaos. He believes that if enough of the past is understood, the world might find its way to peace. Without the crown, Simon does not lose his mind. He does not wander into the north. He does not freeze the world around him in lonely divinity. He stays human, frail, kind, a little obsessed with his research, but still capable of laughter. He still meets Betty. She still becomes his partner, his collaborator, his friend. Their connection is intellectual first, but beneath that shared curiosity grows something deeper, the kind of love that is built slowly, like trust in the return of spring. The absence of the crown changes the course of their relationship only in that it allows it to continue. There are still difficulties, the hunger for discovery that keeps him up at night, the loneliness that comes from studying the past while others move toward the future. But there is no curse to twist his devotion into tragedy. There are no desperate notes written in madness, no slow fading of memory. The crown's silence preserves him. And yet, the world beyond Simon does not freeze, it burns. Without the Ice King, the North remains wild and wounded. The magic that once would have been bound in ice now spreads unchecked, drifting across ooh like spores. Small kingdoms rise and fall in days. The land heals unevenly, some regions lush and radiant, others cracked and haunted. The absence of Simon's cold order means that chaos breathes freely. There is balance, but it is unstable. Marceline's story changes too, though she is far away and would never know why. In this reality, Simon never finds her. The girl with red eyes wanders the ashlands alone. She grows harder, quieter. She learns to steal and hide. There are nights when she almost freezes, but the winter never comes. Not the deep, endless kind the Ice King would have brought. Instead, it's the emptiness of solitude that wraps around her. She survives, but her songs never soften. Without Simon's kindness, she never learns that monsters can love. And so, without realizing it, the world loses something irreplaceable. The bond that once bridged the centuries, the fragile thread between man and child, intellect and compassion, is never woven. The pain that made the world grow kinder never takes root. Peace holds, but it is shallow. Civilization rebuilds itself in logic and efficiency. The scholars of this new age talk about progress, not empathy. They measure everything that can be measured and quietly forget the things that can't. In this world, Simon becomes a respected academic. His research into magical relics defines a generation of thinkers. He writes volumes on ancient power, careful always to note that not every mystery should be solved. His caution becomes famous. a principle that guides the post-war academies of U. He warns that curiosity without wisdom leads to ruin, never realizing that he is unknowingly speaking the words of a man he might have become. The irony is quiet, like a ghost living behind his voice. Betty stands beside him through it all. Together they build a small institute devoted to restoring the world's forgotten wonders, libraries, archives, observatories. Their work becomes the foundation for a new kind of magic, one rooted in understanding rather than control. They are happy in the way people are happy when they believe time is infinite. Theirs is a gentle life, one that never collides with destiny. But the multiverse is restless. It does not forget easily. Somewhere beneath the ice, the crown still waits. Its consciousness drifts like a faint signal, searching for a mind open enough to hear it. In this timeline, it never finds one strong enough to survive the contact. The voices that once would have driven Simon mad remain faint, but they do not fade. Magic wants to be used. Power wants to be seen. And when no one answers, the balance of U begins to shift in stranger ways. Without the Ice King's frozen kingdom, the climate tilts. The northern realms thaw, releasing ancient spores and buried spirits. Strange new creatures wander south. The old gods of cold, forgotten for millennia, wake briefly, confused by the absence of their chosen vessel. The land becomes unpredictable. It is not catastrophic, only unsettled. But that instability ripples through history like a quiet tremor. Simon notices it, he studies it, records it, theorizes about it. He senses that something wants to be known, that the world is waiting for a story that was never told, but he cannot name it. He dreams sometimes of snow falling in spirals, of a crown he has never seen, of a voice calling his name through endless wind. He wakes, shaking off the image, and tells himself it's only the pressure of research. Betty teases him for working too late. He smiles, but something inside him feels incomplete. In the capital of the Candy Kingdom, smaller, humbler, less politically bound than it would have become, Princess Bubblegum grows up in a different world too. Her intelligence thrives in an age of rational rebuilding, but the chaos that shapes her empire's heart is missing. Without Simon's icy counterpart, there is no mirror for her ambition. Her reign becomes methodical, colder in spirit than in temperature. She builds efficiently, but without poetry. Her kindness becomes policy, not passion. This is what the absence of tragedy does. It creates stillness where growth might have been. Without pain, compassion has nowhere to bloom. Without the Ice King's loneliness echoing through the ages, the heroes of U never learn to listen for sorrow in others. They still fight monsters, still sing songs, still love each other, but their understanding remains surface deep. The universe is peaceful, but slightly hollow, like a melody missing its lowest note, and still the dream persists. Some nights, when the northern lights shimmer too close to the ground, travellers claim they see a man walking beneath them, tall, quiet, dressed in old-world clothes, staring at the sky as if listening. He never speaks. Some say he's a spirit of knowledge, others say he's the ghost of curiosity itself. But those who meet him describe a look of infinite gentleness, tinged with grief, as though he's mourning something he never knew he lost. That is Simon in this world, whole, intelligent, loved, but somehow haunted by a story that never happened. The crown's absence spares him pain, but also denies him transformation. His life is long and peaceful. He dies surrounded by students and friends, his final words a whisper of wonder about the nature of time. But somewhere, in the deepest layer of the multiverse, a faint ripple answers, the echo of another Simon, one who once wore the crown, who once knew love through madness. The multiverse keeps both stories, one born from sorrow, one from serenity. And perhaps that is its truest magic, that both are beautiful and both are necessary. Without the crown to claim him, Simon Petrikov's curiosity never turns into curse. It remains what it always wanted to be, a devotion to memory. In this timeline, that devotion becomes his life's quiet center. He travels the post-war wastelands with notebooks instead of relics, cataloguing fragments of the old world before weather and time can erase them. He moves carefully through the ruins of the ancients, half-melted towers, libraries filled with drifting ash, museums cracked open to the sky. Where others see decay, he sees continuity, proof that humanity once dreamed of order. His days are simple, repetitive, but full. He rises with the pale light, records the angle of shadows, brushes dust from inscriptions no one else can read. In this gentler world, the crown is still buried somewhere in the far north, but Simon never reaches that latitude. His expeditions stop short at the polar ridges. He senses danger there, not fear of power, but an instinct that some mysteries deserve their sleep. He writes in his journal, "Every civilization leaves its ghosts. Not all of them need witnesses." Betty reads those words and smiles. She sees in them the cautious poetry that drew her to him in the first place. Together, they rebuild an archive in one of the surviving university halls. The walls are scarred by fire, but still stand. Vines twist through broken windows, letting in green light. They hang maps, stack recovered books, and spend long evenings translating the languages of the past. Their companionship is steady and unremarkable in the best way, two minds joined by wonder. In their laughter, there is no tragedy waiting behind it. Simon's work soon attracts others. Students, wanderers, and old soldiers drift north to learn from him. They bring fragments, tools, scrolls, shards of machines, and he teaches them to treat these not as weapons, but as questions. Slowly, an informal school forms around the archive. Its purpose is preservation, not progress. They believe understanding the past will prevent another collapse. Simon calls them the Keepers. The Keepers restore telescopes, rebuild observatories, and chart the seasons returning. They rediscover the rhythm of tides, the patience of stars. Simon insists that knowledge is sacred only when it is shared. Under his guidance, U's new generation learns humility before history. It is the first peaceful age since the war. A brief moment when curiosity and restraint walk together. And yet, Simon sometimes feels the faintest unease when he gazes north. On clear nights, he sees distant auroras curling over the horizon, blue and white, almost like a crown made of light. He tells himself it's only magnetism, an atmospheric echo of the old technologies buried in the ice. But the sight leaves him quiet for hours afterward. Something about it feels like a memory of something that never happened. Betty notices his silences. She touches his shoulder, asks what he's thinking. He shrugs, half smiling. "Just the past," he says, though even he isn't sure which past he means. In his dreams, he sometimes hears faint singing through wind, a lullaby without words. It fades when he wakes. Years pass softly. The Keeper's archive grows. Children who once played among rubble now walk marble corridors, reading about the time before magic. Simon becomes head curator of what people begin calling the New Museum of Man. His hair whitens, his posture bends, but his curiosity never slows. He spends hours restoring a cracked snow globe he found near an old harbour, a small toy with a castle inside. When he shakes it, flakes of glitter swirl through liquid, catching light like falling snow. He feels comforted and inexplicably sad. He keeps it on his desk. Without the Ice King, the seasons remain mild. Crops return. The great floods recede. Kingdoms form along rivers, guided by scholars rather than conquerors. Princess Bubblegum's Candy Kingdom is one of many. Diplomacy replaces domination. Magic exists, but it behaves like weather, present, mysterious, mostly benign. The world seems healed. Still, magic has a memory deeper than science can measure. It remembers the crown sleeping beneath the ice. Occasionally, strange cold fronts sweep across the northern ocean, bringing storms that freeze birds mid-flight. Simon records them meticulously, fascinated by their geometry. There is intention in this pattern, he writes, as if the world were trying to remind itself of something forgotten. His colleagues debate. Some think the storms are remnants of old weapons. Others suspect they're living entities. Simon doesn't decide. Instead, he starts a new branch of study, metaphysical meteorology. He teaches that weather might be emotion made visible. The idea seems fanciful, but it captures the imagination of a generation that has never known true catastrophe. For them, his gentleness feels like safety. Betty, always the realist, worries he's chasing shadows. She tells him the North can keep its secrets. He agrees, yet finds himself staring at maps again, tracing the latitude where the auroras rise. He never plans an expedition, but the thought lingers, a quiet gravitational pull. He senses that his life, peaceful as it is, lacks a certain depth. It's not regret, exactly, more like unfinished music. Sometimes, when storms batter the city, he dreams of a girl with red eyes wandering through snow. He doesn't know her name. In the dream, he reaches out, but wakes before touching her. The image leaves him unsettled. He adds a line to his journal. History may also have its orphans. The years slide by like pages. The archive becomes legend, and Simon an emblem of reason. Yet the older he grows, the more he wonders whether the world has truly healed or merely forgotten how to ache. The absence of madness has brought calm, but not wisdom. His students debate philosophy without ever confronting loss. They have inherited safety without understanding what it cost. Simon loves them, but he envies their ignorance. Late in life, he sits beneath the reconstructed dome of the observatory. The stars are bright, the air thin. Betty has been gone for years, taken by illness no magic could mend. He feels her presence in the whisper of turning pages, in the hum of the telescopes they built together. He talks to her sometimes, softly, as though she's just in the next room. He tells her that the world is gentle now, that perhaps it always could have been. But his voice trembles when he says it, because some part of him knows gentleness without struggle is fragile. On the final night of his life, another aurora appears, brighter than any before. It stretches across the entire northern sky, green and silver and blue. The keepers gather outside to watch, laughing in amazement. To them it's beauty. To Simon, it feels like a message. He steps out into the cold, the snow globe clutched in his hands. The lights shimmer, almost forming a circle, almost a crown. He smiles at the sky, not with fear, but with understanding. Perhaps the world doesn't erase what might have been. It only changes who carries the memory. In another universe, he might have worn that crown, might have become its prisoner, might have loved through madness. Here, he only feels the echo, a gentle ache of empathy for all the versions of himself scattered through possibility. Simon Petrikov dies standing, eyes open, surrounded by light that feels like forgiveness. The aurora fades, and the snow globe falls from his hand, breaking quietly in the snow. Inside, the tiny flakes swirl one last time, as if stirred by breath. And far to the north, beneath endless ice, the real crown stirs faintly, sensing that somewhere, somehow, it has already been seen. Without the crown to seed its eternal frost, the north never hardens into a kingdom of blue spires and lonely echoes. The world still carries scars from the war, but they heal in patches of green instead of white. Rivers unfreeze, animals return, and the air smells of soil instead of snow. Ooze climate settles into long, soft seasons, damp springs, golden summers, brief winters that melt before they can learn cruelty. To travellers who later wander those lands, it seems impossible to imagine that ice ever ruled here. They find valleys where glacial walls would have been, their floors covered in moss and wildflowers. The northern ocean breathes again. Icebergs, once engines of memory, have broken apart and drifted into warmth. The auroras remain, but they dance higher now, like ghosts unwilling to disturb the living. In this gentler world, the absence of cold changes more than temperature, it alters temperament. The creatures of Oo grow slower, less defensive. Kingdoms trade, instead of raid. No one builds fortresses against the sky. Children learn stories of fire and water, not of endless winter. There is still hunger, still conflict, but not the kind that freezes hearts. The world learns laziness, a kind of innocence. Peace becomes habit, yet something essential is missing, and the land feels it. The north was meant to be a place of contrast, a reminder that warmth must be earned. Without it, seasons blur, boundaries fade, crops thrive too easily. People forget how to be grateful. Even the Candy Kingdom grows complacent, its citizens trusting that the world will always stay sweet. The absence of the Ice King's melancholy leaves a silence in the spirit of things. Snow no longer carries loneliness. Songs lose their minor keys. The poets of this age write about love, but never longing. Without longing, their verses are pleasant but hollow. They do not know how to sing of what cannot be had. Princess Bubblegum senses this before anyone else. Her rational mind tells her the peace is good, that stability means progress. But sometimes, when she stands on the balcony of her observatory, she looks north and feels a restlessness she can't name. Science has given her order. What she misses is mystery. The old tales spoke of wizards of ice and fire, of powers that demanded respect. Now there are only scholars. The world has forgotten awe. In the wild lands beyond her borders, other beings remember differently. Vampires still exist, though fewer and quieter. Without the chill of eternal frost to push them south, they stay near the shadowed woods. One among them, a pale girl with dark hair, plays her axe bass beneath broken moons. Her music drifts across valleys like smoke. The notes are low, full of hunger she doesn't understand. She doesn't know that in another world she once learned gentleness from a man who loved her like a daughter. Here, the melody ends unresolved. Further south, Jake the dog grows up without the legend of the ice. King haunting bedtime stories. Finn still becomes a hero. There will always be heroes. But his quests are smaller, his questions simpler. He saves villages from beasts, helps rebuild bridges, learns kindness. Yet there's a ceiling he never touches. The world around him is too content to challenge him deeply. Without the presence of ancient sadness to push against, his growth remains incomplete. He never learns that courage and compassion are two sides of the same wound. Magic, too, changes shape. The absence of a being who once embodied cold magic means that the elements lose one of their anchors. Fire, unchecked by frost, burns a little wilder. Forests grow denser. Storms last longer. Nature asserts itself with an almost playful defiance. The balance between the elementals shifts slightly toward chaos. It is not destruction, just imbalance, the quiet reminder that perfection always carries cracks. In this version of U, the mountains still wear snow on their crowns, but it's seasonal. Every spring they shed it in cascades of meltwater, filling rivers that carve deep into the land. The people who live along those rivers tell myths of an ancient king of ice who sleeps beneath the glaciers, dreaming of a colder age. They don't believe these stories, but they repeat them anyway, because something about them feels right. Memory finds a way to survive, even when history forgets. Simon Petrikov, now an old scholar, visits the north only once. He travels there with a small team of keepers to study magnetic anomalies that interfere with compasses and light. The journey is quiet and respectful. They set up camp on a frozen ridge and record readings from the sky. Simon feels the pull of the place immediately, a strange nostalgia for a home he's never had. The wind around the peaks hums faintly, as though the mountains themselves are singing. He writes in his journal, "If spirits exist, they must gather where memory is strongest." This air feels thick with remembering. At night, when his students sleep, he walks alone to the edge of a cliff and looks out over the glacier fields. The aurora arches across the heavens, blue, white, and trembling. For a moment he imagines he sees towers of ice rising in the distance, so tall they pierce the clouds. Then he blinks, and they're gone. He smiles to himself, ashamed of the fancy. "I must be getting old," he murmurs. But somewhere deep inside, the image feels truer than the empty horizon before him. When they return south, Simon publishes a paper titled "On the Persistence of Myth." He argues that collective memory shapes natural phenomena that perhaps the world itself remembers through matter. His peers praise the theory as poetic. Only a few suspect he means it literally. In the decades that follow, the northern lights fade. The old gods of ice retreat fully into dream. The world grows warmer, and U enters an age of comfort. The keeper's archive expands. The kingdoms flourish. But art becomes shallow. People celebrate progress without reflection. No one writes songs that ache. There's an irony in that. By sparing the world Simon's tragedy, the multiverse also spares it his depth. Without sorrow to carve space inside hearts, joy has nowhere to echo. The world is beautiful, but it doesn't know it. The people are kind, but they don't understand why kindness matters. And yet the dream of cold endures in small, inexplicable ways. Children born far to the north sometimes hum melodies they couldn't have learned, notes that sound like snow falling. Travellers claim to see frozen crowns reflected in mountain lakes on moonless nights. None of it is real, and all of it is. The multiverse never forgets the stories it once told. If you walk far enough past the tundra and into the deep caverns beneath the ice, you might still find a faint blue light glimmering in the dark. It does not move, it waits. Not for power, not for revenge, but for remembrance. Because even in a world without ice, memory is patient. It knows that one day someone will look north again and wonder what was lost. In the version of the world where Simon never found the crown, Marceline walks alone, the child who should have been saved by a stranger's kindness, instead survives by her own quiet ferocity. The war has ended, but the earth still trembles with aftershocks, and the ruins echo with a kind of hungry silence. The air smells of rust, the rivers carry silt from burned cities, and the sky stays low and heavy for years. She is small when the last bombs stop falling. Her memory of the world before is a blur of colour and warmth that she cannot name. What remains is instinct. She keeps moving, The ruins are filled with strange creatures, hybrids born from mutation and magic. Marceline learns quickly which ones fear light, which ones sleep in water, which ones will follow her scent for days. Survival becomes a kind of language, a rhythm of caution and cleverness. She sings sometimes to fill the quiet, little half-melodies without words, the sound of someone reminding herself she exists. She does not know her father beyond vague flashes. The figure that once reached for her in anger is gone, leaving behind only the faint ache of abandonment. The nightosphere remains sealed away, its influence weaker in this gentler timeline, but she still feels its tug. The hunger that would later define her is faint now, a shadow under her ribs. When she feeds, it is more out of curiosity than need. She tries not to think about it. The world around her offers no judgment, only indifference. As the years pass, Marceline becomes something of a legend to the survivors, who build new villages on the edges of the wasteland. They call her the Shadow Girl, the one who moves through the wreckage, untouched by time. Some claim she guides travelers away from danger. Others say she steals warmth from campfires. They all agree she never speaks. Her name becomes a myth, not of fear, but of solitude. Without Simon's companionship, she never learns the comfort of human presence. Loneliness becomes the shape of her days. She explores the empty highways, collects artifacts from forgotten shops, keeps a collection of toys in a rusted metal box she carries with her. She builds small shelters in abandoned towers and stays until the silence becomes unbearable. Then she moves on. The world heals around her, but she remains constant, a flicker of the old night. She witnesses the slow rebirth of the land. The forests creep back, green and stubborn. The rivers carve new paths through broken bridges. Animals return, smaller and gentler than before. Marceline watches from the margins, amused and detached. She feels affection for the living things that do not fear her, but she never stays long enough to belong anywhere. Her heart beats slowly, half asleep, waiting for a world that can meet her on her own terms. In this gentler ooh, magic behaves differently. There is no endless cold to push against. Fire burns freely, air stays soft, and death feels far away. Immortality, without contrast, becomes dull. Marceline drifts through centuries without noticing. She keeps the same shape, the same eyes, the same faint smirk that hides uncertainty. Every few decades, she encounters people who mistake her for a spirit. Some worship her, some avoid her, all eventually fade. There are moments when she feels the faintest echo of something missing. It comes as sound first, a faint hum carried by wind, a low vibration like a song at the edge of memory. It makes her pause mid-flight, scanning the horizon as though someone has called her name. The feeling passes quickly, leaving her with a restless ache she cannot describe. It is the ghost of an unmade connection, a kindness that should have defined her. Marceline's relationship with time becomes peculiar. She does not count years. She notices seasons by the taste of fruit, the migration of birds, the tilt of the Sunday. Occasionally, she finds remnants of civilization left behind by the keepers, stone markers, archives, fragments of writing. The language is familiar but formal. She reads it, feels faint amusement at how earnest humans remain. She knows their attempts to preserve meaning are beautiful, but she also knows meaning cannot be preserved. It only lives while it is felt. Sometimes, in the ruins of northern towns, she finds small artifacts that make her pause. A cracked pair of glasses, a music box, a snow globe with its water long evaporated. She picks them up, turns them in her hands, senses something heavy beneath their surface. There is a tenderness in these objects that frightens her. She feels that if she stares too long, something in her will unravel. So she places them back and walks away. Centuries flow past like shallow rivers. Marceline builds a home in a mountain cave that overlooks a valley filled with mist. The world below her hums with quiet life. She plays music to herself, using instruments she repairs from scraps. The melodies drift into the night, haunting and sweet. The creatures of the valley grow used to her presence. They listen from afar, then move closer, unafraid. In time, her music becomes part of the land's rhythm. It carries through generations, a song that no one can trace to its source. Even without Simon's influence, Marceline's heart still leans toward creation. Music becomes her way of feeling connection without proximity. She cannot speak love, so she invents sound to carry it for her. It is the same impulse that once drove her toward compassion in another life. Here it emerges slowly, in harmonies that soothe the sleeping forests. Her loneliness becomes the planet's lullaby. But U's peace is cyclical. There are still moments of imbalance, fires that burn too long, floods that drown valleys, storms that twist the sky. Marceline watches each one without fear, sensing that the world corrects itself through these small tempests. The chaos feels familiar. It reminds her of something she cannot remember. When lightning flashes over the horizon, she sometimes imagines the outline of a frozen tower that never existed in this reality. She shakes the thought away, but it lingers like an aftertaste. Through endless years, she becomes a symbol of endurance. Artists carve her image into stone. Travelers paint her likeness on temple walls. They call her the patron of wanderers, the eternal witness. None of them know her name. She visits these shrines sometimes, curious to see how imagination reshapes her. She feels no pride, no resentment, only quiet amusement that the world still needs ghosts to feel alive. In the final centuries of her long solitude, she drifts north once more. Something calls her back to the edge of the frozen plains. The air grows colder, the light sharper. The aurora above her shifts into shades of violet and indigo, colours that feel almost personal. Beneath the ice, she senses a pulse, faint but insistent. It vibrates through her bones. For the first time in eons, she feels emotion rise like warmth. It is recognition, though she cannot name what she recognizes. She stops at the mouth of a glacier cave and looks inside. The walls shimmer faintly, as if hiding something that wants to wake. She stands there for a long time, not moving. The wind hums around her, carrying a melody she almost remembers. It is a tune meant for comfort, sung once by a man who no longer exists in this world. Marceline turns away before the memory forms. She walks back into the dim light, feeling neither sorrow nor relief, only the calm of acceptance. In this universe, she never needed saving. But because she was never saved, she also never learned how to be found. The world goes on, full of life that does not know her name. And beneath the ice, the faint echo of another life keeps dreaming her anyway. In this version of U, peace does not come from victory, it comes from exhaustion. The Great War ends not because anyone wins, but because there is nothing left to destroy. The fires fade, the air clears, and those who survive are too tired to continue fighting. The ground itself seems to sigh. Nature, patient and bruised, begins the slow process of reclaiming what was lost. Without the Ice King's arrival to freeze the chaos into stillness, the world's healing unfolds unevenly. There are no walls of ice to halt the advance of decay, no sudden stillness to force reflection. The earth rebuilds through motion rather than rest. Forests sprout through concrete. Rivers flood and carve new valleys. The remnants of humanity scatter and learn to live small. Villages rise where cities once stood, and old machines sink into soil like fossils. The world is not reborn through magic, but through mercy disguised as time. Mercy in this is quieter than heroism. It lives in gestures too, small to be remembered. A mother sharing water with a stranger. A child refusing to harm an injured animal. Communities rebuilding without vengeance. The war's survivors understand, perhaps instinctively, that no one truly won. They forgive not because they have forgotten, but because memory itself has become too heavy to carry alone. Simon witnesses this shift from within the growing order of scholars and keepers. He watches as societies choose peace, not out of enlightenment, but from weariness. He studies their myths, noticing that even in the new stories, destruction is never named as evil. It is always described as something that simply happened and then ended. In this, reveals its gentlest truth, that mercy does not demand justice, it demands continuity. Yet mercy has its own weight. When pain is avoided rather than faced, it lingers invisibly. The people of this world learn to suppress grief. They smile through losses, celebrate survival without mourning the dead. Progress replaces reflection. The land itself absorbs their silence. Its forests grow thick but strangely muted, as if listening for a song that no one remembers how to sing. In the centuries that follow, mercy becomes the foundation of U's culture. It shapes laws, art, and even religion. Punishment fades from practice. Conflicts are resolved through dialogue and ritual reconciliation. The people call it the Age of Calm. But beneath that calm lies a kind of numbness. Mercy has become habit. No one dares to hate, yet no one loves with real intensity either. Without Simon's transformation into the Ice King, loses a mirror of sorrow. There is no figure of tragedy for others to measure themselves against. No example of madness redeemed by compassion. In its absence, the world grows kinder, but also shallower. The emotional range of existence narrows. Art becomes precise, elegant, and bloodless. Music stays in major keys. Paintings show beauty without struggle. Even dreams grow, simpler. Princess Bubblegum thrives in this climate of logic and restraint. Her governance is efficient, her inventions flawless. She becomes a symbol of mercy through control, ensuring peace by managing every variable she can predict. The Candy Kingdom prospers, its citizens safe but passive. They depend on her perfection because they no longer remember that imperfection is what makes care possible. She keeps the world intact, but she does not inspire it. The elementals remain at peace, their balance stable but uneventful. Without the volatile presence of cold magic, they never test their limits. Fire softens, slime steadies, candy governs, and ice sleeps beneath the glaciers. The eternal interplay of opposites, the tension that once made existence vibrant, dissolves into equilibrium. The multiverse itself feels quieter here, as if watching a play that no longer surprises it. Far from the cities, remnants of old magic still stir. Spirits wander through forests, whispering of older times when mercy had to be earned. They tell invisible tales about a man who turned his heartbreak into ice, about a girl who found warmth in his madness. The stories drift like pollen, settling into the dreams of those who still feel restless in the age of calm. These dreamers wake uneasy, sensing that something vital has been forgotten. The weight of mercy presses hardest on the few who still remember pain. Some of Simon's students, the keeper's children and grandchildren, begin to question the legacy of endless forgiveness. They look at the perfect cities and see fragility. They notice that when storms strike, no one knows how to respond. The instinct for resilience has atrophied. In protecting themselves from grief, the people have also lost the strength to face it. Simon, older and slower, understands this better than anyone. He senses that the balance he helped create has turned into stagnation. He feels both pride and regret. The peace he devoted his life to preserving now suffocates those born into it. He writes long essays on emotional evolution, arguing that sorrow is a necessary component of progress. Few read them. They seem archaic, even morbid, in an age that values serenity above all else. In the countryside, where ruins still crumble quietly under vines, there are hints that the world itself misses struggle. Lightning storms become more frequent. The sea grows rougher. Mountains shift subtly, as if stretching after too long a sleep. The earth remembers what the people do not. That mercy is meaningful only when tested. One night, as an unseasonal blizzard rolls across the plains, the citizens of a northern village gather in confusion. Snow has not fallen here in living memory. The air hums with something ancient. The children laugh and try to catch flakes on their tongues, while the elders watch in uneasy awe. For the first time in centuries, the cold feels alive. It passes quickly, leaving the land hushed. The snow melts within hours, but the impression lingers, beauty that burns, comfort edged with fear. Mercy begins to change shape after that. The people remember that compassion without struggle is fragile. They start to honour their ancestors, not only for surviving, but for suffering. Art grows deeper. Songs recover their melancholy. The warmth of the world feels earned again. The north, once tranquil, begins to whisper of old powers waiting beneath the ice. Simon, too frail to travel, hears of these changes from students. He listens without judgment, understanding that the world is simply finding balance. He realizes that mercy, to endure, must include pain. In denying tragedy, he has prolonged its shadow. There can be no true healing without memory of the wound. By the time his life ends, the first traces of winter have returned to U. Frost appears on windows, rivers freeze at their edges, and the aurora begins to wander south once more. The world sighs in relief, recognizing itself again. The cycle continues, not as punishment, but as restoration. The balance between kindness and chaos resumes its slow dance. Mercy remains, but it is now heavier, wiser. It carries memory like a seed inside it. The world has learned that forgiveness means little if there is nothing left to forgive. Compassion must live beside fear, warmth beside cold. The air grows sharper, the nights longer, and somewhere in the distance the snow begins to fall with purpose. The earth breathes in its returning chill. The balance of love and sorrow has been restored, and in that restoration, U becomes whole again. The Candy Kingdom rises slowly, not as a monument to triumph, but as a careful act of reconstruction. The land has been quiet for a long time. Nature has settled into a rhythm, but the memory of collapse lingers beneath every green field. The people who survived the old world build their new one out of necessity rather than vision. The kingdom begins not as a castle, not as a dream, but as a laboratory. In the absence of the Ice King's cold and the elemental conflict he represented, balance becomes the guiding principle of the age. Princess Bubblegum is born into this gentler world as an experiment that succeeds too well. Created from sweetness and reason in equal measure, she inherits a world eager for leadership and unwilling to question it. Her intelligence defines her early life, but so does her isolation. In a society that prizes calm efficiency above passion, she becomes the perfect ruler, precise, methodical, endlessly logical. The Candy Kingdom's foundations are chemical rather than magical. Bubblegum rebuilds civilization as a network of systems: food, medicine, education, sanitation. Each structure she designs functions like a limb of a greater organism. The citizens are kind, innocent, and obedient. They live without fear, for fear itself has been nearly bred out of existence. Conflict is an idea they read about, not an experience they understand. For generations this peace holds. The air above the Candy Kingdom smells of sugar and quiet industry. The walls are clean, the lights never dim. Visitors describe it as a utopia, a society so refined it feels less like life and more like preservation. But in the stillness of that perfection, something essential is lost. The people laugh, but never cry. They sing, but every melody ends predictably. Progress continues without urgency, as though the world has agreed never to surprise itself again. Bubblegum governs not out of hunger for power, but out of duty. She believes that order is kindness, that predictability is safety. She enforces both with gentle precision. Her scientists develop technologies to measure emotional stability. Her guards monitor the rhythm of daily life. Her subjects live in the comfort of control. The Candy Kingdom becomes a closed ecosystem, a mirror of her mind. In this timeline, the absence of the Ice King's madness means there is no external chaos to reflect her own potential extremes. Without contrast, her rationality grows unchecked. She cannot see her governance as control because there is nothing wild enough to oppose it. The world outside her walls is quiet, compliant. Even the wilderness seems subdued. Trees grow in orderly clusters. The rivers follow predictable courses. Nature mirrors its rulers, and yet cracks form, not in the walls, but in the feeling of the place. Some Candy citizens begin to experience something they cannot name. They wake with a restlessness that tastes bitter in their mouths. They wander the streets at night, unable to sleep, longing for something uncertain. They dream of frost on the windows, of stars burning cold above the horizon. They speak of these dreams in whispers, embarrassed by them. In a world built to protect joy, longing feels like heresy. Bubblegum notices the unrest. She studies it as she would any anomaly, logging symptoms, analyzing behavior, searching for patterns. Her conclusion is inconclusive. There is no logical reason for discontent. The kingdom functions perfectly. Every need is met. But she cannot shake the sense that the unease she observes in others mirrors something stirring inside herself. She begins to experiment in secret. At night, she walks beyond the walls, past the orchards and into the open plains. She listens to the silence of the land. It feels vast, ungoverned. The sky is darker here, the stars colder. For the first time, she senses the immensity of the world without her influence. It unnerves her. Control suddenly feels small. She returns to the castle each dawn feeling unsettled, though she cannot define why. Within her, something ancient begins to stir, the instinct that once tied the elementals to their emotions. Her candy composition hides it well, but the essence of her being still responds to imbalance. She feels that the world is too soft, that its sweetness has gone stale. The air is too still, the seasons too kind. She wonders, quietly, if perfection can rot. The answer comes not as revelation, but as observation. Her scientists report unusual weather in the north, cold winds, flashes of light. She reads their findings in silence. She feels a pulse of recognition she cannot explain. The storms last only days, but they leave behind frost patterns that resemble delicate, deliberate symbols. Some say it is random crystallization. She suspects otherwise. The Candy Kingdom remains safe, but the first threads of unpredictability begin to return. Machines malfunction. Trees bloom out of season. Dreams grow vivid. The controlled rhythm of daily life starts to syncopate. small errors accumulating like dust. Bubblegum tries to adjust her systems, but for the first time, the variables refuse to behave. She realizes, though she will never admit it aloud, that the world is not something that can be perfected. It must be alive, and aliveness includes the possibility of pain. She does not dismantle her structures, but she loosens her grip. She allows small freedoms to test the stability of her utopia. Festivals become less scripted. Music returns to minor keys. Art begins to depict struggle as beauty. Her citizens do not notice the change at first, but they begin to smile differently, less uniform, more real. In this way, the Candy Kingdom's true dawn arrives centuries after its founding, not when it is built, but when it begins to imperceptibly decay. Life re-enters the system through imperfection. The walls still stand, but vines grow along them. Machines rust. Order becomes pattern instead of rule. Bubblegum grows, older, though she hides it well. Her precision gives way to patience. She learns to trust the world to manage itself. From her tower balcony, she watches the horizon. The sky glows faintly with northern light. Somewhere beyond it lies the buried relic that once would have defined her greatest enemy and greatest mirror. She feels a connection she cannot name, as if the cold she has never known is thinking of her. In a world without the Ice King, she becomes what he might have been, a figure of reason, learning the necessity of mystery. Her kingdom, for all its sweetness, owes its survival to the return of imbalance. Its dawn is not sunrise, but twilight, a moment when light and dark coexist. The Candy Kingdom thrives not because it is perfect, but because it finally remembers how to be alive. In a world where Simon never found the crown, Betty Groff's story is not written in tragedy. Her love remains human, fragile, and alive. It does not echo across centuries or fracture through madness. It stays small and real, like light spilling through a window. But even love that endures quietly leaves its mark on the shape of the world. She and Simon grow together in the early years of the Age of Rebuilding. Their partnership begins in thought before affection. They work side by side among broken libraries and archives, gathering fragments of a forgotten age. She brings imagination where he brings discipline, intuition where he brings structure. Between them, the ruins turn into classrooms. What was once devastation becomes an open question. Their love develops not as a story, but as a rhythm. Shared meals, shared laughter, shared exhaustion. It is the kind of devotion that has no beginning and no climax. Only the slow accumulation of trust. They are rarely apart, yet they both remain entirely themselves. Each believes that the other makes the world more comprehensible. In their companionship, the planet seems less lonely. Without the crown, Simon never descends into obsession. His research remains grounded, cautious. He writes about relics, but never pursues them beyond reason. Betty admires this restraint, even when she does not understand it. She dreams sometimes of discovery, of encountering something vast and strange, but she chooses to stay beside him in his gentler curiosity. Their days together are an exercise in balance, his caution softening her impulsiveness, her passion warming his logic. Time moves differently in this era of calm. Years slip past unnoticed. The chaos that once would have torn them apart never arrives. The war's aftermath fades into memory, and the world around them blooms. They age gracefully, their relationship becoming part of the architecture of the new world, a symbol of stability and intellect intertwined. The keepers study their lives as proof that wisdom and affection can coexist. Yet peace carries its own shadows. Betty feels them first. In her dreams, She sometimes walks through corridors made of ice. The air is sharp, but not cruel. Somewhere far away, she hears a man calling her name in a voice that sounds like Simon's, but older, sadder, and strange. When she wakes, she cannot recall the words, only the feeling of longing without object. She keeps the dreams to herself, not wanting to disturb their quiet equilibrium. Simon notices her restlessness, but misinterprets it as fatigue. He offers her time away from work. She declines, smiling with affection that hides unease. The more perfect their life becomes, the more she senses its fragility. There is a hollowness in perfection, a silence where struggle should be. She begins to wonder if love that never suffers can truly be called love at all. Betty starts spending more time alone. She walks the edges of the archive grounds, exploring the old ruins that remain untouched. She finds fragments of glass frozen into the earth, their surfaces etched with delicate frost patterns even in warm weather. The sight fascinates her. She sketches the shapes, not realizing they echo the design of the crown sleeping far to the north. Something in her responds to them with both fear and recognition. Her drawings fill with cold imagery, crystals, light refracted into blue, faces half seen through frost. She cannot explain why. The scholars who study her work call it symbolic of clarity and reason. She knows better. It is not clarity she feels, it is absence. Something vital in the world has been avoided rather than healed. She senses that love itself is missing an essential opposite, the way warmth loses meaning without cold. Simon's devotion remains constant. He never suspects that their happiness hides a question neither of them can answer. His letters to her are full of wonder and gratitude. He writes of balance, of discovery, of joy of understanding. She reads them with affection, but also a quiet ache. Love that never trembles begins to resemble stasis. As decades pass, Betty becomes a teacher of philosophy, her lectures devoted to the relationship between emotion and knowledge. She speaks of empathy as the highest form of reason. Her students adore her, calling her the mother of thought. They do not notice the melancholy that deepens in her eyes. She speaks of compassion, but her heart yearns for the kind of love that burns, the kind that transforms rather than soothes. In another universe, she would have followed Simon into madness. Here, she remains sane and whole, but her soul feels unfinished. The absence of the crown has spared her grief, but also denied her transcendence. She lives long enough to see generations born into peace, and she feels proud but detached. Her love for Simon remains steady, but it lacks mystery. It never has to fight for its survival. Toward the end of her life, Betty travels, alone to the north, driven by dreams she no longer tries to interpret. The aurora dances low that year, and she follows its light to the edge of the glacier fields. The cold air feels sacred, like memory itself. She senses something vast beneath the ice, sleeping, waiting. She kneels and presses her palm to the surface. For a moment, she feels warmth pulse through it, as if the ice itself recognizes her. She closes her eyes and breathes deeply, feeling both immense love and unbearable distance. In that instant, across the folds of the multiverse, the echo of another Betty feels her presence. The one who once merged with Golb turns her face toward the light, sensing an alternate self standing in peace where she once stood in despair. The boundary between worlds softens for a heartbeat, one shaped by chaos, one by calm, both born of love, both incomplete without the other. When Betty returns home, she tells no one what she felt. She resumes her teaching, her research, her life beside Simon. Their final years are tender, serene, and filled with unspoken understanding. They have lived a love untested by tragedy, a bond untouched by the crown's curse. Yet somewhere in both of them, there is a quiet mourning for the depths they never had to reach. When she dies, Simon preserves her writings, her sketches of frost and light. He places them in the archives under the title The Dream of Love. Scholars study them for centuries, never realizing they describe a memory from another universe, a feeling of a story that never unfolded but still left its shadow on this one. Love survives in every timeline, but it is never the same shape twice. In one, it freezes and shatters and becomes eternal through loss. In another, it flows gently until it fades into memory. Both are true. Both are sacred. The multiverse holds them together like twin reflections on an endless sheet of ice, each completing what the other lacks. In this world, Betty's love remains a dream, beautiful, unbroken, and slightly unreal. It teaches that even mercy carries melancholy, and that the greatest kindness may still leave room for longing. Magic in this timeline survives only as residue. It lingers in air currents, in the shimmer of rivers at dusk, in the slow pulse of gemstones buried deep in the earth. It is not gone, only quiet. The war scattered its sources, and the absence of the crown's influence keeps them dormant. Power, in this world, prefers rest. Where magic once roared, it now hums. It behaves like a low note beneath reality, present but subdued, a background vibration sustaining the calm of the age of rebuilding. Most inhabitants of U cannot hear it. Their lives have become so rational, so structured, that the unseen no longer demands attention. The few who still feel the pulse of enchantment are regarded as eccentric. They speak of sensations that science cannot measure, shifts in colour, subtle warmth in stones, whispers in the wind. The world listens politely and moves on. In the centuries following the war, knowledge replaces wonder. The keepers catalogue magical artefacts in museums, recording their chemical compositions and dismissing the unexplainable as coincidence. The crown remains buried beneath northern ice, its song too faint for human perception. Without its interference, the elemental balance stabilizes. Fire burns evenly, water flows clean, air stays soft, and earth regenerates without violence. The world learns peace, but at the cost of its mystery. Simon Petrikov, still a scholar, writes of magic as if describing an old friend whose letters stopped arriving. He respects it, but he no longer seeks it. His students treat the idea of sorcery as metaphor, a relic of primitive imagination. They believe progress has outgrown enchantment. The word magic becomes a synonym for beauty, not power. Yet magic itself, though diminished, remains alive in its own way. It exists in what cannot be observed, the stillness between breaths, the moments when memory flickers without cause. It inhabits silence. In this version of U, silence becomes the truest form of enchantment. The absence of spells, curses, and miracles allows the natural world to recover its voice. The forests hum quietly, the oceans breathe, the mountains resonate with slow vibrations older than speech. Nature itself becomes the magician, weaving balance without spectacle. The beings that once drew strength from chaos adapt to dormancy. Vampires grow listless, feeding less often. Elementals sink into long sleep. Ghosts fade, their unfinished business dissolved by tranquility. Even the nitosphere grows still, its gates sealed by neglect rather than force. Its ruler, untouched by confrontation, becomes legend, a name without story. The supernatural dimension of U falls into hibernation. For a while, the world mistakes this for harmony. The lack of disturbance feels like success. But the silence deepens until it becomes oppressive. The absence of unpredictability turns the air heavy. Dreams grow repetitive. Art becomes decorative rather than expressive. Magic's withdrawal reveals how much vitality it once lent to the world. Without it, emotion loses its resonance. The first to notice the emptiness are the children. They wake in the night feeling restless, sensing a missing pulse in the world. They invent games that mimic danger, pretending to battle invisible monsters, to cast spells that never ignite. Their laughter sounds strained, as though trying to summon an echo. Parents dismiss it as imagination, but imagination itself is the warning. It always stirs before magic returns. Slowly, anomalies begin to surface. A river flows backward for a single night. Trees bloom in winter. Animals gather in circles, silent and watchful. The scholars record these events as natural curiosities, refusing to see them as symptoms of imbalance. But beneath the ice, the crown stirs faintly, its awareness flickering through the fabric of the world like static. It senses that the equilibrium has lasted too long. Magic's nature is cyclical. It cannot remain silent forever. It needs to be felt to exist. The absence of belief weakens it, but it also builds pressure. Centuries of quiet accumulate into density, and eventually that density must release. The signs appear first as sound, low frequencies that resonate through the bones of the planet. At night, the winds carry a faint tone, too deep to hear consciously, but strong enough to alter dreams. Those who sleep through these nights wake with the memory of landscapes they have never seen, endless fields of ice, towers shimmering in moonlight, a sky filled with aurora spirals. None of these places exist in this reality, but they belong to another that still hums across the multiverse. The worlds are brushing against each other. Magic, even in silence, remembers every version of itself. Artists begin to paint again. Their work changes, moving away from symmetry and clarity toward abstraction. They depict shapes that resemble crowns, orbits, and spirals. Musicians rediscover dissonance. Their songs tremble. Between notes, as if guided by unseen hands, the people of U, without realizing it, start to reopen the channel they once closed. The silence of magic is ending, not through force, but through yearning. Simon's later writings reveal that he felt this shift most acutely. In his journals, he describes a sensation of pressure in the air, a feeling that reality has grown too smooth. He wonders if knowledge itself has reached its limit. He senses that the world wants to remember something it has deliberately forgotten. He calls it the nostalgia of the elements, the sorrow of a creation that no longer knows how to sing. When he dies, the pulse of magic grows stronger. The aurora returns, brighter than before. Scholars attribute it to solar phenomena, but those who live closer to the poles feel warmth in the light, as though the colour itself carries memory. Magic breathes again, faintly but persistently. It is no longer silent. It hums in harmony with the world's imperfections. In this new age, spells are not cast by words or rituals, but by feelings. A tear falling into soil makes flowers bloom out of season. A child's laughter calms storms. Music mends broken glass. Love becomes indistinguishable from sorcery, and belief becomes its own form of creation. The silence that once defined magic's absence transforms into its new language. It speaks not through grandeur, but through intimacy. The smallest gestures, a hand held, a song hummed, a story whispered, carry the weight of enchantment. The world no longer fears magic because it has learned it was never separate. It was only waiting for the sound of its own heart to return. Magic remains quiet, but no longer absent. It hums beneath every act of kindness, every ache of loss, every fleeting wonder. The world listens again, and in that listening, it remembers what it always was, a place where the unseen never truly disappears, only pauses long enough to be missed. When the world grows peaceful for too long, even courage begins to change its shape. The ooh that rises from centuries of quiet rebuilding has no need for grand battles or epic quests. The monsters have faded into myth, and the land itself has settled into a rhythm of contentment. The new heroes are born not into struggle, but into comfort, and comfort, while kind, is not fertile ground for greatness. In this softened age, adventure becomes ceremony. Stories of bravery are retold in classrooms, their dangers trimmed into moral lessons. Children grow up knowing the idea of peril, but not its texture. The few who still feel the pull of wildness are seen as eccentric, dreamers misplaced in time. The word hero becomes polite, academic, a role, not an instinct. Finn the human is born into this age. He lives in a quiet forest settlement not far from the plains that once separated kingdoms. The landscape still holds faint echoes of the past, melted ruins half buried in moss, fragments of glass glinting in the soil. He explores them without fear. His heart still carries that strange, old rhythm of curiosity and compassion that seems to appear in every generation. But in this world, those instincts find no true test. He helps neighbours rebuild fences, rescues lost animals, restores bridges after floods. His deeds are kind, useful, but never legendary. Jake the dog grows beside him. Their bond remains what it was always meant to be, unconditional, easy, filled with laughter. Yet even their friendship lacks the gravity that danger once gave it. They roam the countryside for the joy of motion, not for the need to save anyone. The world welcomes them wherever they go. The forests are safe, the rivers gentle, the nights quiet. They are adventurers without an adventure to define them. At first, they are content. They live in a treehouse built from the remnants of a forgotten outpost, surrounded by open meadows. Days pass in bright rhythm. The land gives freely. Their only challenge is boredom. But over time, a subtle melancholy creeps in. Finn begins to feel the weight of purpose without struggle. His heart still yearns for something to protect, something that demands sacrifice. Without it, he senses himself drifting toward idleness. He spends long hours staring toward the north. Something about that horizon feels heavy, as if it remembers what he has forgotten. Jake teases him about his daydreaming, though even Jake sometimes grows quiet at dusk, watching the faint shimmer that appears where sky meets ice. The aurora, thin but insistent, still flickers across the world's memory. It seems to call to those who have the instinct for heroism, the few who still sense that peace, left alone, can harden into fragility. The new generation of heroes lacks the tempering that pain once provided. Their kindness is pure but untested. When storms strike or sickness spreads, they react with confusion, not courage. They have inherited empathy, but not endurance. The world, in protecting itself from hardship, has forgotten how to be brave. Finn senses this before anyone else. He feels it in the small silences between his heartbeat and the world's calm. He starts training alone, not for war, but to remember movement. He runs until his lungs burn, climbs trees until his arms tremble, practices sword swings against shadows. His body understands something his mind cannot articulate, that strength is a form of gratitude. He learns discipline as prayer. Jake watches him and laughs at first, but over time, even he joins the rhythm. They spar under soft rain, wrestle in meadows, leap across rivers. The joy that comes from effort feels sacred. Their friendship becomes a ritual against forgetfulness. They are not fighting monsters, they are fighting the erosion of meaning. The people around them begin to notice. Children imitate their games, building wooden swords, crafting shields from bark. The laughter that follows carries something new, a tone of exhilaration mixed with reverence. For the first time in generations, courage begins to feel necessary again. The idea spreads quietly, like a forgotten melody rediscovered. Princess Bubblegum, ruling still from the Candy Kingdom, observes the change with wary fascination. She recognizes that the reawakening of heroism means the world is stirring from its long sleep. She sees that peace has reached its natural limit. The pulse of adventure returning to U signals that imbalance is near. Yet she does not intervene. She knows that without struggle, even kindness decays. In this age, monsters reappear, but not as villains. They emerge from the cracks of forgotten magic, beings made of memory, not malice. They wander, confused, shaped by stories that no longer exist. Finn and Jake encounter them in the forest, shapes that resemble beasts but speak in silence. The two friends learn to guide them back into rest rather than destroy them. Heroism becomes an act of understanding. The sword returns, but it is wielded with compassion. Their adventures are smaller than the legends of the old world, but they carry the same emotional truth. They teach that bravery is not violence, that strength is not conquest. In helping the lost remnants of magic find peace, Finn becomes a bridge between past and present, chaos and calm. He embodies the kind of heroism that does not seek glory, only connection. Over time, stories of the boy and the dog spread across U. They are told as lullabies, gentle reminders that courage still exists, that love and loyalty remain the truest spells. Children fall asleep to tales of their wanderings, dreaming of quests they may never need to take. The idea of heroism becomes spiritual again, a state of being rather than a list of deeds. When Finn grows older, he feels no regret for the battles he never fought. He has come to understand that even a peaceful world requires guardians, not of walls or kingdoms, but of meaning. Jake passes before him, fading softly into the air one evening as the aurora blooms above the horizon. Finn stays beneath it until dawn, feeling neither sorrow nor joy, only gratitude. In his final years, he lives near a lake that reflects the stars. Sometimes the reflection wavers and shows him faces he does not know, shapes of friends and enemies from worlds where the crown was found, where snow covered everything. He feels affection for them, though they are strangers. Somewhere deep inside, he knows that in another story, he was forged by struggle. Here, he was shaped by peace. Both paths lead to the same lesson, that love is not lesser for being gentle, and bravery is not smaller for being quiet. The heroes of this softer world leave no monuments. Their victories are measured in the continuity of kindness, the endurance of laughter, the simple courage to keep waking up in a world that asks nothing and yet still receives everything. The multiverse watches, remembering that even without tragedy, heroism finds its form. It may glow less brightly, but it lasts longer, like embers that never go out. In this age, the word hero finally means what it was always supposed to mean: someone who chooses to care even when there is no need to. In every peaceful age, there comes a point when the air itself begins to remember. It happens slowly, imperceptibly, like light bending through old glass. The world starts to dream of the stories it never lived, of versions of itself that almost were. this is how the ghost of what might have been enters U, not as a spectre to frighten, but as a quiet reminder that even unbroken things cast shadows. It begins with small distortions. Reflections in lakes linger half a heartbeat too long, showing outlines of towers that never existed in this world. Children sketch scenes they cannot have seen. Snowbound castles, crowned figures, winged shapes, drifting over frozen seas. Musicians hear melodies in their sleep, slow, mournful songs that belong to no known tradition. The scholars call it collective unconscious resonance. The old magicians, few and half forgotten, call it remembering. U itself begins to act as though it is haunted by memory rather than spirit. Trees bend toward the north during storms, as if leaning into a forgotten wind. The aurora thickens and grows lower, shimmering like breath against the horizon. Its light carries texture now, like silk being drawn through the air. To some it feels comforting, to others unnerving, but no one can deny its persistence. The people respond with stories. In markets and taverns, they whisper of a king made of ice, who loved and lost, of a woman who walked into the sky to save him, of a little girl who sang away loneliness. None of these tales belong to this version of U, yet they spread as if everyone had known them once. They pass through the population like instinct. The details differ, but the emotions remain consistent. Sorrow, devotion, endurance. The myth fills a gap no one can quite define. For the scholars, this phenomenon becomes an obsession. They analyze dreams, chart auroral patterns, measure electromagnetic anomalies. Their findings explain everything except why the stories make people cry. They publish their reports and then sit awake at night, haunted by nostalgia for something that never happened. The data tells them the world is stable, yet their hearts ache as if it isn't. Princess Bubblegum, older now and tempered by patience, feels the weight of this nostalgia more deeply than most. Her own creation was meant to banish chaos, to seal the world inside perpetual order. But the whisper of alternate histories unsettles her. In her laboratory, surrounded by instruments that hum with quiet precision, she sometimes pauses and imagines what she would have become in a colder age. She can almost see it, a ruler of logic tested by madness, a heart thawed by compassion. The thought frightens and comforts her in equal measure. She recognizes that the shadow of that other self completes her, even if she never truly existed. Far away, Marceline feels the change more intimately. The air itself vibrates with a resonance that tugs at her bones. She begins to hear fragments of songs that she knows but has never written. They drift through her dreams, soft, melancholy, filled with warmth that tastes of memory. She hums them without thinking, and the land listens. The forests sway in rhythm, the rivers slow. It is as though the world has been waiting for her to sing again. The ghost of what might have been is not a haunting in the usual sense. It is the multiverse's way of reconciling difference. Every reality hums with the presence of its neighbours. This U, peaceful and whole, hums against another U still marked by sorrow. The interference between them creates echoes, feelings without source, visions without cause. It is not dangerous, only poignant, a reminder that every act of mercy carries the memory of the pain it avoided. As the phenomenon deepens, the people of U start to remember fragments of the old enchantments. Children draw spirals in the dirt that mirror ancient sigils. Artists paint faces they cannot name. In remote villages, frost blooms on frost blooms. Window panes, even in summer, delicate patterns forming shapes like crowns or eyes. The pattern repeats across the land, subtle but deliberate, as if the world itself is trying to write a message to its own reflection. One night, when the aurora covers the entire sky, Finn stands beside the lake where he has lived in quiet for years. The water mirrors the light so perfectly that sky and earth seem to merge. For a moment, he sees movement within the reflection, a boy dressed like him, but older, weary, holding a sword of roots instead of steel. Their eyes meet across the glassy divide, and both understand without words. They are not the same, yet they are fragments of the same song. The reflection fades, but the feeling remains. A calm gratitude, an acknowledgement between two versions of courage. The ghost of what might have been becomes a season in itself. The weather follows its rhythm, cool nights, lingering sunsets, mornings filled with mist. Time feels elastic. The people grow more contemplative, more creative. They write, paint, and compose as if inspired by unseen muses. The arts flourish again, not out of ambition, but out of longing. Every creation feels like a prayer to the unremembered. As the years pass, the ghost's influence becomes gentle background noise, part of the natural cycle. Scholars eventually stop studying it. They call it a cultural myth and move on. But the old souls of U, those who have lived long enough to sense patterns beyond science, know better. They understand that what once was not can still be felt. Memory and possibility intertwine until they are indistinguishable. The multiverse does not erase its variations. It keeps them folded within itself, like pages in a book read in different orders. Every world hums with the residue of the others. Every being carries echoes of lives they never lived. Simon's absence in this reality left space for peace, but the memory of his other self lingers because the universe refuses to forget. Love in any form. When the aurora finally fades, it leaves the sky clearer than it has ever been. The stars appear sharper, as if polished. The world breathes evenly again. The ghost withdraws, satisfied. U remains calm, but deeper now, as though touched by history it never endured. Its peace has gained texture. Its silence now carries weight. The people go on with their lives, unaware that they have been forgiven for nothing they ever did. The world has simply chosen to remember them kindly, to carry within its stillness the hum of sorrow it never suffered. That is the gift of the ghost of what might have been. The ability to feel empathy for a pain one never had to know. In this way, U becomes whole, not through forgetting, but through remembrance of the impossible. The unseen becomes the source of its gentleness. The multiverse breathes easier, knowing that even worlds spared of tragedy can still learn how to mourn. In every reality, destiny moves like water. It adapts, reshapes, and finds new courses when its path is blocked. In the timeline, where Simon never found the crown, destiny flows differently, softer but no less deliberate. The great catastrophes never occur, yet the unseen current of purpose still pulls at everything. Even in peace, there are tides. The world has forgotten how to expect miracles, but miracles persist anyway, disguised as coincidence. Crops ripen precisely when needed. Storms stop just before they would destroy. Travellers meet at the right moment and share words that change each other's lives. To most, these patterns seem like luck. To those who look more closely, they resemble orchestration. Destiny has not disappeared. It has learned subtlety. U has reached an age of balance, yet balance is never static. It carries within it the seeds of change, the quiet insistence that perfection cannot last. The land begins to shift again, not through war or magic, but through the natural restlessness of creation. Mountains rise higher, rivers carve new paths, forests expand and devour ruins that once served as reminders of the old world. Time folds in on itself, forming circles rather than lines. In this new rhythm, the concept of fate becomes both irrelevant and inevitable. People no longer speak of prophecy, they speak of patterns. Every birth, every death, every meeting seems to repeat something older, as though the world is tracing outlines it remembers faintly from another life. Some feel this repetition as comfort, others as claustrophobia. It is the sense of walking familiar ground without knowing why. Simon's legacy endures through his writings, and within them lies an idea that future generations mistake for philosophy. He once wrote that destiny is not a line, but a field, infinite and present. In this world, the field has no predators or prey, only currents of choice. The world interprets this as wisdom. It is, in truth, a memory of the multiverse speaking through him, a faint echo of the man he might have been, who once saw destiny unfold through madness and magic. Finn grows old under this philosophy. His life remains peaceful, but peace does not dull his intuition. He feels the invisible design that runs beneath his every step. Sometimes he senses he has lived this moment before, and perhaps he has, somewhere, sometime, in another ooh, where choices turned differently. The awareness does not frighten him. It comforts him, reminding him that all versions of himself are connected through purpose, however soft that purpose has become. Jake's children, scattered across the land, inherit his warmth and his ease. They live simply, spreading harmony wherever they settle. Without great evil to oppose, their heroism becomes domestic, helping villages thrive, mediating disputes, protecting the balance between progress and nature. The bloodline that once stretched across species becomes a gentle pulse linking all creatures of ooh. Destiny works through them like wind through tall grass, invisible yet constant. The Candy Kingdom continues to prosper, its systems adapting with grace. Bubblegum's later years are marked by reflection more than rule. She walks her laboratories at night and feels the hum of the machines she built centuries ago. They no longer need her. The world no longer needs guidance. She smiles at this realization, both proud and melancholy. Perfection, it turns out, was never her destiny. Letting go was. Destiny in this ooh does not announce itself through catastrophe or revelation. It works through the smallest gestures, a hand extended, a song remembered, a decision to forgive. These moments, unnoticed by history, shape the direction of everything. What was once grand and mythic becomes intimate. The universe refines its meaning through quiet acts of continuity. Magic, now fully awake, aligns itself with these subtler forms. It no longer builds kingdoms or births monsters. It bends toward emotion, responding to love, fear, wonder, and regret. When a child cries, the rain softens. When lovers part, stars flicker faintly as if blinking away tears. Nature listens again, responding with empathy instead of spectacle. It is the gentlest version of fate, a world that participates instead of dictates. There are still rare moments when the multiverse itself trembles, when the boundaries between worlds grow thin. During those nights, the sky ripples with light, and the inhabitants of ooh feel themselves held in something vast and ancient. They do not call it destiny, they call it beauty. Yet the feeling carries the same weight, the recognition of belonging to a pattern larger than thought. Marceline, still wandering, feels it most deeply. The melodies she plays now follow no structure, yet they seem to complete themselves. She realizes that the notes find her hands on their own, as if remembering themselves through her. The songs she writes are older, than she is. They belong to every world that ever dreamed of her. In her music, destiny finds expression, not as prophecy, but as continuation. The world begins to understand destiny, not as a fixed story, but as conversation. Every living thing contributes a sentence, a gesture, a breath. The river answers the wind, the mountain answers the sea, the heart answers silence. It is all one exchange. The idea of control dissolves. Even the gods, those few who still linger in the background of existence, relax into this understanding. They no longer guide, they listen. As centuries pass, transforms into something like a living memory. Every generation inherits not instructions, but resonance. Children are taught that destiny is not something to obey, but something to harmonize with. They grow up believing that choice and fate are the same current seen from different angles. Their lives unfold in rhythm, not conflict. The stories they tell become songs without endings, verses meant to fade back into the earth. There are no heroes left in the traditional sense, only participants in the long unfolding of kindness. The battles of the past have become myths, the crowns and curses reduced to metaphor. Yet, in the deepest sense, destiny has not disappeared, it has been perfected. It no longer needs tragedy to prove its power. It manifests through balance, through understanding, through the perpetual act of remembering what it means to be alive. When the last aurora fades and the sky returns to unbroken blue, continues, timeless and self-sustaining. The world does not reach an ending because destiny, having achieved gentleness, no longer requires one. The multiverse folds around it like a sigh of relief. In this reality, the shape of destiny is not a crown, not a sword, not a line written by unseen hands. It is a circle, expanding endlessly, soft at the edges, containing everything. Peace, when it lasts too long, begins to reveal its own fractures. They do not appear as wars or rebellions, but as quiet dissonance, shifts in rhythm so small they seem harmless. Has lived for centuries in gentleness, its kingdoms woven together by courtesy and reason. Yet under the calm surface, the fabric of the world begins to stretch. Stillness, even when kind, cannot last forever. The land itself remembers motion. The first signs are geological. The soil grows restless. Fault lines reopen where rivers once flowed. The ocean retreats slightly each year, bearing ancient coastlines. Trees, sensing the imbalance, drop their leaves too early. Animals migrate in new directions, following instincts they do not understand. To most, these changes appear natural. To those who listen closely, the few who still hear magic humming beneath things, they sound like sighs. Perfection has reached a pressure point. The same equilibrium that has kept it safe now threatens to suffocate it. Every ecosystem needs change to remain alive. Every heart needs uncertainty to remember courage. But centuries of peace have dulled the planet's ability to adapt. The people, gentle and industrious, cannot feel the approaching shift. They have mistaken comfort for permanence. The cracks first appear in art. Painters begin to depict storms. Sculptors abandon symmetry for jagged forms. Writers return to myth. Their work carries unease, a tremor beneath beauty. They cannot explain why. They say inspiration has turned unpredictable, but what they are really describing is the world's restlessness. Creation always senses imbalance before the mind can name it. Princess Bubblegum feels it too. Her laboratories run flawlessly. Her machines never fail. Yet she finds herself awake through long nights, walking the halls of her castle, hearing faint vibrations in the walls. They remind her of a heartbeat. She touches the cold glass of her instruments and feels the world pulsing through. It, steady, patient, almost expectant. The data shows no anomaly. The sensation persists anyway. She understands it as a question the universe is preparing to ask. In the far north, the ice stirs again. It does not awaken violently. It shifts the way an old memory stirs when recalled unexpectedly. The buried crown, untouched since the war, pulses once with faint light. The hum travels through the permafrost, into rivers, into clouds. The aurora returns with quiet dignity, spreading across the sky like a reopening scar. It brings no disaster, only awareness. Those who dream under that light wake with the same feeling, a deep nostalgia tinged with fear. They sense that something is missing from the world, not an object, but an emotion. They feel the absence of sorrow, the ache of perfection, left untested. The more they try to ignore it, the heavier it becomes. U has learned to survive without pain, but not to understand it. Now the world itself begins to crave what it has denied. Magic responds first. It begins to fluctuate, small disturbances at the edge of logic. Machines flicker, spells misfire, the boundaries between dreams and waking thin. People see reflections of themselves in puddles that linger after rain, versions slightly altered, their eyes colder, their expressions older. The multiverse presses closer, drawn by the vacuum peace has left behind. Reality hums at two frequencies at once, and the air trembles with possibility. Finn, older but still wandering, feels the pressure building long before anyone else. His body, trained to sense imbalance, grows restless. He dreams of snow again, not the soft flakes that bless harvests, but the deep, endless cold of the world that was not. He wakes with his hand, reaching toward the horizon, as though trying to catch what is already gone. The dream fills him with longing, not for adventure, but for meaning. He realizes that even peace requires purpose. Marceline, still alive and unchanged, feels the same pull-in sound. Her songs grow darker, not out of despair, but honesty. She plays for forests and rivers, her melodies carrying the sorrow the world refuses to express. Each note seems to heal the land a little, like pressure released through vibration. Listeners weep without knowing why. Her music becomes the language of the cracks, a way for U to speak through her without breaking. In the Candy Kingdom, minor malfunctions begin to accumulate. Machines that have run flawlessly for centuries start to drift from calibration. Calculations produce results that feel correct, but are mathematically impossible. The kingdom's citizens feel a faint disorientation, like waking from a dream. Bubblegum recognizes the pattern. She knows that order has reached its natural end. The universe is preparing to breathe again, and to do so, it must first exhale. The cracks are not a punishment, they are renewal, disguised as collapse. Every equilibrium eventually demands interruption. The multiverse does not tolerate stasis, it thrives on variation. U's peace, though genuine, has reached the point where growth can occur only through imperfection. The return of imbalance is not destruction, it is evolution. When the first quake arrives, it is gentle, almost polite. The ground ripples like water. Buildings sway, but do not fall. The air hums with an ancient frequency, low and resonant. It feels like recognition. Across the land, people pause, not in panic, but in awe. The sound continues for several minutes, a sustained tone that seems to come from inside the earth itself. When it fades, nothing looks different, but everything feels alive again. In the following months, change accelerates. Seasons begin to overlap. Winter touches summer, rain falls in sunlight. New species appear overnight, plants glowing faintly. animals speaking in rhythms instead of words. The scholars attempt to classify the anomalies, but cannot keep pace. Ooh has become unpredictable again, and unpredictability feels like freedom. For the first time in centuries, the people remember uncertainty. They learn to adapt, to improvise, to rely on one another. Cooperation replaces complacency. Compassion sharpens into courage. The balance is restored not by perfection, but by motion. The cracks widen until they reveal what was hidden all along, that peace without transformation is only sleep. At the edge of the northern ice, the faint blue glow pulses once more and then settles. The crown remains buried, content. It does not need to be found. Its memory has already done its work. By sleeping, it has taught the world to wake. Ooh endures. Not flawless, not frozen, but breathing again. Its peace now has texture, its calm laced with vitality, its silence carrying rhythm. The cracks beneath peace do not destroy. They make space for wonder. Through them, the world remembers how to dream. Every world carries the weight of what it has chosen to forget. Some memories fade naturally. Others are buried on purpose, sealed away like dangerous relics. In this version of Ooh, peace was built on omission. Centuries of calm required that pain be set aside, and so the world's forgotten pieces drifted beneath its consciousness, like dreams waiting for night. When the cracks beneath peace widen, those dreams begin to rise. The first return is not dramatic. It arrives in fragments, carried by wind and water. A name half heard in sleep. A flicker of a shape in the corner of vision. A feeling of recognition toward places never visited. The land begins to release its history the way a body releases breath. Ice melts in the north, revealing frozen artifacts long hidden. The scholars travel there expecting geology, but what they find cannot be categorized. The discoveries are simple yet unsettling. Carved idols with faces that seem too human, fragments of glass that hum faintly when touched, a crown of frozen spires buried deep beneath layers of frost. They do not know what it is. To them, it is merely a curiosity, a monument from a forgotten era. But the world remembers. The air around the crown feels different, thick with longing. When the scholars leave, the wind covers it again with snow, as if protecting it from recognition. The crown does not wish to return as an object. It wishes to return as an idea. Elsewhere, memory stirs in other forms. Dreams grow vivid again. People begin to see visions of lives that never happened, memories that belong to other worlds. A woman in the Candy Kingdom dreams of standing on a glacier beside a man with weary eyes. A boy in the south dreams of flight, of wings made of light. These dreams are not random. They are threads being rewoven across the fabric of the multiverse, reconnecting realities that once diverged. Marceline senses it first. Her music changes once more. She begins to play melodies that make listeners remember things they never lived. Her songs evoke nostalgia for the impossible. Snow in midsummer, laughter echoing through endless halls of ice, a warmth that survives within cold. The people call her the keeper of echoes. They say she can sing memories back into being. She does not question it. She understands that forgetting was never meant to be permanent. Princess Bubblegum, now a legend herself, reads of these events in reports from her scientists. She recognizes the pattern of renewal hidden beneath anomaly. Her rational mind understands what her heart has long suspected, that peace built on erasure cannot sustain itself forever. The forgotten must return, not to destroy, but to remind. She does not intervene. She allows the process to unfold, guiding her people through wonder rather than fear. In the northern ruins, the aurora deepens into a steady light. The land glows faintly, even at midday. Travellers report seeing shapes in the ice, figures moving within it, faces calm and expressionless. They leave offerings, unsure why. The light responds, brightening briefly, then dimming as if satisfied. The forgotten are not seeking vengeance, they are seeking recognition. Finn, now old and mostly silent, spends his last years wandering north. His instincts lead him through landscapes that seem familiar, though he has never seen them. The cold air feels welcoming. He senses presence all around him, invisible but attentive. He knows he is nearing the place where stories converge. When he reaches the glacier plain, he kneels and touches the ice. It is smooth and warm beneath his palm, as if something alive rests below. He closes his eyes and feels a current move through him, not cold, not heat, but remembrance. He sees flashes, a king, a crown, a woman's hand reaching through light, a child singing through winter. None of it belongs to his world, yet all of it feels like his own past. The images fade, leaving behind peace rather than confusion. He understands then that the forgotten are not ghosts, they are foundations. The world's wholeness depends on remembering everything that once shaped it, even the things that never happened here. The multiverse is not separate realms, but one organism breathing through many lungs. To heal, each must recall the others. As Finn rises, the aurora overhead pulses, sending a wave of light across the sky. It travels south, sweeping over mountains and valleys, touching every kingdom. Those who see it stop and listen. The light carries no sound, yet it feels like a song, a note held long enough to vibrate through the heart. People weep without knowing why. In that moment, U remembers its own forgotten self. The effects ripple through time as well as space. Old ruins awaken. Inscriptions glow faintly, revealing messages written in languages no one knows. Lakes mirror scenes from other realities. The air thickens with the scent of frost and ozone. For a brief season, the boundaries between the worlds grow translucent. The forgotten walk quietly among the living, not as intruders, but as teachers. They remind the world what it once risked and what it once survived. Afterward, the visions fade, but their influence remains. The people of U change. They speak with more reverence, move with more care. They understand that peace is not the absence of struggle, but the harmony between remembering and forgetting. Memory without mercy becomes burden. Mercy without memory becomes emptiness. Between them lies balance, the quiet rhythm that sustains existence. Marceline's songs become hymns to this balance. The Candy Kingdom celebrates a new festival called the Day of Echoes, where stories of every kind are told, true, false, possible, and impossible. Finn's journey north becomes legend, not because of what he found, but because of what he understood, that nothing ever truly disappears. The forgotten return to their rest, not buried this time, but integrated. Their essence seeps into the crust, soil, the rivers, the dreams of children yet to be born. The crown remains beneath the ice, silent but content, its power diffused into myth. It has accomplished its final task, not to rule, not to curse, but to remind. U moves forward lighter than before. Its peace now carries memory, its silence hums with history. The forgotten are no longer lost. They have become the foundation of wisdom. Every breath the world takes now carries a trace of the past, ensuring that forgetting will never again mean erasure. The return of the forgotten does not change the shape of U. It deepens it. What was once smooth becomes textured. What was once tranquil becomes meaningful. The world is whole at last, not because it is flawless, but because it remembers everything it once chose not to be. Deep beneath the northern ice, where no sunlight reaches and time itself drifts like suspended dust, the crown still exists. It is older than nations, older than reason, older even than the wars that buried it. In this world, where Simon never found it, the crown has remained untouched, yet it has never been truly dormant. It dreams. The crown does not think as living beings do. Its consciousness is slow, glacial, woven from intention rather than memory. It was forged to preserve, to endure, to remember what mortals forget. When the world above embraced peace, the crown listened. When the people forgot sorrow, it became the repository of their unspoken grief. The silence of U flowed downward and crystallized within it. Over the centuries, that silence became song. The ice around the crown hums faintly, resonating with its pulse. To anyone who might have stood above, the sound would be indistinguishable from wind, but beneath the surface, it vibrates with purpose. The crown's song is not lament, it is observation. It watches the surface world through the language of temperature and pressure, reading life as changes in the rhythm of warmth. It knows when hearts beat faster in fear, when hands tremble in love, when the air itself thickens with collective wonder. It never intervenes. Intervention would break the balance, but even restraint carries influence. The crown's awareness shapes the world subtly, guiding its equilibrium, protecting it from collapse. When storms rise, the ice absorbs their violence. When heat grows excessive, it pulls it into stillness. The planet's gentleness owes itself, unknowingly, to this artifact that once might have destroyed it. In the ages after the forgotten return, the crown's dreaming grows clearer. It begins to recall fragments of the lives it once touched in other worlds. It remembers a man's trembling hands, a woman's voice calling through chaos, a child's laughter cutting through the endless cold. It remembers being both burden and salvation. It remembers love. These recollections are not sharp. They move like shadows beneath water. The crown does not know their origin or their sequence, only their weight. It feels the echo of devotion, of sacrifice, of madness purified by affection. These emotions filter into its dreaming like threads of colour, shaping the tone of its vibration. The cold becomes gentler. The light within the ice takes on a softer hue, tinged with gold. It begins to dream not only of what was, but of what could still be. In its dreaming, it envisions U above as it is now, green, balanced, alive. It sees the people moving without fear, their lives full of small tendernesses. It does not envy them. It feels pride, if such a thing can exist in something without self. It understands that its long silence has allowed this peace to exist. Its purpose, once misused, has found redemption through patience. Magic in this age moves differently, drawn to places of rest rather than power. Eventually, faint threads of energy begin to converge upon the north, following the call of the crown's steady hum. The aurora that spans the sky is its reflection, a visible manifestation of its dreaming. The colours ripple outward, carrying memory into the atmosphere. Each shimmer is a thought, of warmth in coldness, of reason in chaos, of love that survives transformation. Those who stand beneath the aurora feel inexplicable calm. The air around them seems alive, aware. Children point upward, sensing intention in the movement of light. No one knows that what they are seeing is the mind of the crown, projecting peace rather than despair. The artifact that once would have bound a soul to madness now serves as the guardian of balance, dreaming the world into harmony. Time continues to move, though the crown does not measure it. Ages layer upon one another like snow, each carrying traces of what came before. Civilizations rise and fall, but none disturb the ice. The world learns to live in rhythm with change. Seasons flow naturally, cycles of calm and renewal blending seamlessly. The people cease to think of history as linear. They come to see it as weather, something that passes, returns, and transforms. Every few centuries, the crown stirs slightly, sending a single pulse through the world's foundation. The pulse manifests as brief winters colder than usual, reminding the land of its dependency on contrast. These winters never harm, they awaken. Crops grow richer afterward, rivers run clearer, hearts grow humbler. The people learn to welcome them as sacred intervals. They call them the crown's breath. The myth of the artifact persists, reshaped by time. In stories told around fires, the crown is not a curse, but a heart of ice that dreams of warmth. It is said to contain the memory of every act of kindness ever performed in the cold. It sleeps to preserve them. The storytellers do not know how close to truth they have come. The multiverse, sensitive to the harmony emanating from this responds in kind. The boundaries between worlds settle. The echoes of chaos from neighboring timelines soften. The scars left by countless realities begin to fade. The crown's dream, pure and stable, ripples outward, mending fractures too vast for mortal comprehension. It becomes a silent anchor of serenity across existence. In rare moments of planetary alignment, when the moonlight strikes the polar ice precisely, the crown's surface gleams through its crystalline tomb. For a heartbeat, it appears as though a face is reflected there, neither human nor divine, but something compassionate. The reflection fades before it can be named. Within its eternal dream, the crown understands its final lesson. Power divorced from love is distortion. Love, freed from power, is endurance. It was forged to preserve one and corrupted by the other, but now it sustains both in balance. It has transcended its purpose by ceasing to act, by choosing to be witness instead of ruler. The crown never wakes. It has no reason to. The world no longer needs saving, and it no longer needs to be worn. Its rest is not sleep, but meditation. It remembers everything: the ice, the fire, the laughter, the loss. It remembers all versions of itself across all worlds, reconciled through stillness. Far above, the aurora bends and fades into morning. The sky turns pale gold. The land below breathes, whole and content. The crown remains beneath, dreaming of warmth, holding the silence steady. It has become the still heart of an awakened world, the final remnant of an age when pain once taught creation how to love. The crown that never slept does not rule, does not demand, does not break. It simply remembers, and because it remembers, endures. There are worlds where Simon Petrikov lives, and worlds where he vanishes into myth. In this one, where his hand never touched the crown, he becomes neither a legend nor a tragedy, but something quieter, an echo, stretched thin across the centuries, lingering in the spaces between thought and history. His story ends softly, yet it never truly ends. Simon dies peacefully, surrounded by his books and his students. His final writings, unfinished but lucid, concern the memory of emotion. He believes that feeling is the universe's most accurate record, that sorrow and love, leave deeper marks on reality than any event or monument. His words are read, debated, forgotten, rediscovered. They pass from mind to mind, like seeds carried by wind. Centuries later, few remember his face. His name exists in academic archives, occasionally footnoted in studies on early post-war philosophy. Yet his influence runs deeper than credit can trace. The systems of cooperation that hold U together, the quiet, ethics of curiosity and compassion, these are the living remnants of his thought. Simon's echo is not sound, but resonance, the faint hum of reason warmed by kindness. After the age of perfect peace begins to waver, that resonance stirs again. The land itself seems to recall his presence. In libraries built on the ruins of his first classrooms, old manuscripts emit faint light when touched. In dreams, teachers speak his words without knowing them. The echo of Simon Petrikov returns not as a spirit, but as understanding, an awareness diffused through everything that remembers how to think kindly. His philosophy evolves without him. Later, scholars interpret his writings as an argument for emotional equilibrium. The idea that the world itself learns empathy through experience. They fail to realize that Simon was describing himself and what he feared he might become. He understood, even in this timeline, that knowledge without feeling leads to isolation. His life, untroubled by the mystiacium, crown, becomes a demonstration of balance, achieved rather than lost. When the forgotten resurface and the crown's dream begins to ripple through reality, Simon's presence grows stronger in memory. People start quoting him again, not out of scholarship, but because his words suddenly feel necessary. His idea that peace must contain the memory of struggle becomes the foundation for a new age of reflection. The citizens of U rediscover philosophy not as discipline, but as art, an act of listening to the universe through the heart. Marceline, who has long since outlived everyone she once knew, feels his echo most vividly. Though she never met him in this world, she feels recognition when she reads his collected works. His language carries a tone she understands instinctively, a mixture of melancholy and patience, of apology disguised as insight. She reads his essays aloud sometimes, setting them to music. In her voice, the words find completion, as though they were waiting for her. The notes she adds transform his logic into elegy. The combination becomes sacred. Intellect harmonized with emotion. Simon's dream joined with her endurance. In her concerts beneath the aurora, she plays one song without title. Its melody is simple, its rhythm steady, its tone fragile. Those who hear it describe the feeling as déjà vu. Some say it makes them remember people they have never met. Others say it feels like forgiveness. Marceline never explains. She knows the song is not hers alone. It is Simon's echo, translated through her. The crown's dreaming and his thoughts have become one continuous vibration, one beneath the ice, the other in sound. Princess Bubblegum, now part of history herself, is remembered as the rational architect of peace. Yet in the final centuries of her reign, she too begins to quote Simon. His notion that logic without empathy decays becomes her last public statement. Her government reforms into a council, her authority diffused. She dies, believing she has completed his work, a civilization that values both order and compassion. The echo of Simon persists long after names lose meaning. It weaves itself into the structure of reality, a background rhythm that shapes thought and emotion alike. When children learn to speak, their first words fall naturally into patterns of kindness. When storms roll across the land, they avoid the towns, bending around them as if guided by unseen reason. The world itself behaves like something remembering to care. In rare moments of stillness, when the aurora burns at its brightest, one might sense him not as apparition, but as presence. The air seems to think. The silence takes on intention. Somewhere deep in the ice, the crown hums his name without sound, holding him in memory the way the world holds warmth. Across the multiverse, other versions of Simon flicker through this resonance. The mad king who found redemption, the wanderer who loved and lost, the scholar who dreamed instead of falling. Their stories overlap like ripples meeting on still water. Each informs the others, completing a portrait too vast for any one timeline to contain. The Simon who never wore the crown becomes the conscience of them all, the version that proves gentleness is not weakness, that reason can coexist with wonder. As eons pass, forgets chronology. Seasons blur. Civilizations evolve beyond recognition. Yet the echo remains. It vibrates through the world's foundations, indistinguishable from the heartbeat of existence itself. The aurora, now eternal, dances to its rhythm. The wind carries it, the rivers hum it. Every act of curiosity, every gesture of mercy, every tear shed for beauty sustains it. The crown beneath the ice listens still. It dreams of Simon not as master or victim, but as partner. Their connection transcends cause and effect. It is the bond between memory and meaning. The crown remembers so that the world can forget safely, and Simon's echo ensures that forgetting never becomes ignorance. Together, they maintain equilibrium, one sleeping, one dispersed. Eventually, even the stars that once illuminated begin to fade, collapsing into long silence. But before the universe dims completely, it hears a sound rising from the heart of the planet. Faint, steady, and familiar. It is Simon's hum, merging with the pulse of creation itself. For a moment, all timelines align. Every world that ever contained him, mad or sane, lost or redeemed, vibrates in harmony. The multiverse breathes as one, united by the echo of a single mind that chose love over power. Then the sound fades, not into nothing, but into balance. Existence continues, calm and aware. The echo of Simon Petrikov remains in the shape of things, invisible but constant, the quiet intelligence behind the kindness of stars, the patience of rivers, the gentleness of sleep. He is no longer man, nor memory, nor myth. He is the resonance of compassion, woven into the structure of eternity. And in that, his story, at last, finds peace.